All right, I think we're live. You guys hear us and see us okay?
Hopefully we did it right. You think we'd have this figured out by now? Well, while you're, if anyone's there, is there anyone actually on it?
I think there's
All
people.
right, good.
But
That's less
if you
embarrassing.
can hear us, let us know. If there's a problem with sound or something, we can try and fix that. But
what do you think of the shirt? We just added to our website a store, and so we're using Printful, which is a print-to-ship company. But we're really stoked on all the stuff that we've gotten from them thus far. We ordered a bunch of prototypes to just see if the shirt quality was what we wanted.
Yeah, we're super excited because we actually like the products that we have. So we wanted to make sure that we got them, wore them, and actually really liked the stuff that we were putting out to you guys. So we had to wait on samples for ourselves and figure all of that out and design. And then some of our patrons helped us out with kind of the first orders and making sure everything was working good, and hopefully.
And Scott told us which hats to get. And stuff, so.
We have a couple hats. We have some women's tank tops. We have a couple men's t-shirts.
So this is the Tonto shirt, and then there's a Goose shirt. Kelsey made all of these, and then I pretty much live in this in coronavirus days. But also on the trip, I started wearing one to keep the sun off me because we're just getting beat by the sun all day. Mm-hmm. And then dust. And so I just live with this. It's one of these that goes around your neck and it's over my nose most of the day, every day. So
it's like a buff kind of a.
Yeah.
And then we got some new stickers.
Yep. Love these stickers. I love the little desert tan one. And then a kind of a flat black one. It's pretty cool. So yeah, lots of stuff. Tote bag, as we like right now, we're in a hotel. We're actually in Reno, Nevada. And
Beautiful
so
Reno.
We have these bags we actually got in Guatemala, not this one, but like that we've had since 2 years ago. We use for everything, and they will not fall apart. And they're made out of like old tarps. It's amazing how strong they are.
Constantly use them when we go to get groceries and even just carrying stuff if you're like
moving into a Airbnb or a hotel like we are today. So we made some bags, and then I like these 5-panel hats now. I kind of like. They're just kind of different and cool. And then we also have normal trucker hats and stuff.
These ones are embroidered, very fancy.
Ooh. And then all the stuff comes in different colors. So like with Printful, the cool part was you can get this shirt in tan or gray or whatever. I think the biggest drawback for using Printful is it's made when you order it. So, you know, we've had stuff shipped next day, and then we've seen a couple of the orders that patrons had put in last week. I think there's one that's still waiting on it. So it could be a 5 or 6 day wait.
Yeah,
if they run out of stock on a certain shirt.
They say the longest it should take is 7 days. So hopefully everything goes out within a few days, but it's like print on demand. So as soon as someone orders something, then they print it and send it out. Obviously we don't have much room to carry shirts with us. So we had to figure out something, and hopefully this works out. So
yeah, financially investing in thousands of shirts in different sizes and all that was crazy enough, but then to carry them in Goose is like ain't gonna happen. So this works so much better that when we want one of our own shirts, we can just order it up, have it sent to a random USPS somewhere and pick it up. And so we're super stoked on that.
You can get to the shop by just going to dirtsunrise.com, and then in the menu at the top of the page there is a store button, and it'll take you to everything there.
Shop.
It's store now. It was originally shop, but it's store. Yeah. So anyways, you can find all that stuff there. And then if you guys have comments of like other things you might want or suggestions, let us know, because we can do all sorts of stuff now. So pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
So that's
I see a lot of familiar faces in the chat, so it's kind of cool. So just saying hello to everyone out there. I won't name every person, but it's cool to see all these names that we recognize on there. And hello to Martine in Buenos Aires. Iris, sorry. We've been gone on from the trip long enough. We forget how to say everything that we learned how to say correctly during the trip.
Yeah, it's funny how fast you lose the Spanish. The little Spanish that we had,
but we do snap back into it at the most inappropriate times. You know, we're staying in a hotel and we hear somebody speaking Spanish, so we speak Spanish to them, and they might think that I don't know. I think that everyone takes it nicely, but sometimes you feel bad and you're like, no, I didn't mean to like presuppose that you wanted to speak Spanish, but I was excited that I heard it. And so I wanted to burden you with my poor Spanish. So it has been fun to be able to use Spanish occasionally since we've been home. But yeah, it goes fast, real fast.
Yeah, it takes a couple minutes of thinking to like get back into that mindset for me.
Yeah.
Mexican restaurants are really hard because like I want to order in Spanish and then I end up like ordering half in English and half in Spanish, and it's just really confusing. And so.
But yeah, so we're just doing this as an update. We haven't done any live updates in a while. We have been just head down working. We've been able to meet up with some people as we've traveled around, which has been cool. Since we've been back in the US, we had, when we did that first live, we had probably 25 days or something of relaxing. We stayed at a family's place that they generously let us stay at. And
I think we had coronavirus.
I think we probably did, honestly, looking back. We spent like a week laying down and not feeling good. But at the time, it was still not early, but it was late March at that time, early April.
Yeah.
And there was no tests, shockingly. So we just kind of chilled. But from pretty much that moment on, we've been working. So all of the events we were going to do were canceled. And so we found a job something I've done off and on, and Kelsey's done a little bit of. And I started doing this like 12 years ago when the economy was really bad, and I was, we lost it all, so to speak. Like house foreclosed, lost this job, laid off from that job. Banks. I was working for banks at the time, and they were going out of business. And I found this job working out in nature, and on mountain bike, dirt bike, hiking, and in 4x4s primarily. So we fell into that again. So lucky that they had one of their teams drop out, and they said, "Hey, actually, we have an opening." So we've been doing that like crazy and really haven't stopped except a trip to Phoenix to try and sell off more stuff and you just simplify our lives and then been back at it. So we've been in Oregon, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona. Now we're in Nevada.
Starting to get cold here. So I think we'll be heading south somewhere. I don't know where, but sometime soon to get warmer because Goose doesn't have a heater. Well, he has a heater when he's driving, but not when we're like
not when he's turned off. Yeah, we don't have like a Webasto or a little buddy or anything like that. So it snowed again. If you keep up with us on Instagram, you've kind of seen it started snowing again. And so we're not sure how much more we're going to be able to work. But we've been saving for the next leg of the trip. So that's where our minds are at, is looking for the world to reopen. We know it's going to take longer than we'd like or anyone would like, I think. But is what it is, I think. So we're just going to be figuring that out as we go.
Yeah, totally. And we have some cool stuff happening here in the US as well. So we're not bored while we're waiting to go somewhere else.
Yeah. And Kirk, who's a smart man, yes, Baja. And so, we got so much on our plate to try and get caught up on the videos. And when we do, we have cool stuff we want to share with you guys that we've been doing more recently. Mostly we've been working. But, when it's too cold to work up here in northern Nevada in the mountains or in Oregon, we're going to head south, head to Baja. Baja 1000s next week. We're probably not going to make that, but
I wish we were.
Yeah. Cheers to all the friends who are racing. And, if for some reason we make it, we'll be posting about it a lot because we'll be super excited and we'll want to rub it in everyone's faces that we made it. Yes. But I don't think we're going to.
I can't wait for Baja fish tacos. I've been dreaming about them since we left Baja.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So. Which has now been a really long time ago. If anyone is having a beverage, feel free.
I have tea because it's cold.
Yeah, I have beer because it's delicious.
I have my little notes in my Dennis Garmin Dirt Sunrise notebook.
Yeah, that's not like sponsored. No. Dennis is the guy. He's a longtime friend and a cowboy who, like a legit sort of old time cowboy who's done everything from build and race trophy trucks for the Ford Rough Riders to he's made leather stuff his whole life. And we have tons of his stuff. All the belts we have, any holsters or knife sheaths or anything like that is all made by him. And so, this is our sort of field notes thing for as we're traveling along, and love that. So check him out if you're ever looking for anything out of leather. Check it out. Scott's got the Coors Banquet. Cheers to you.
We just finished our last course, so it's on to something else right now.
It is. This is something local. Pigeon Head Brewery. No idea. I don't know. You just got to sort through it when you're traveling. Some are good, some are bad. This is pretty good. But
so another just thing to talk about is things we're kind of working on video wise. Obviously, we're going to continue like doing the vlogs and sharing our adventures with you. But then on top of that, possibly some how-tos. I don't know. That might be
Yeah.
for patrons only, but we kind of want some feedback on what you guys would think about that.
Yeah, we don't want to be. It's not that we want to be exclusive and not put out how-to videos out there. I just feel like there's a million how-to videos out there. Most of them are always do this, never do that. Here's the book on how to do this. My mindset and my knowledge base is mostly experiential from my life of doing this. And I do have the sort of book knowledge from being an instructor at Overland Expo and the rallies and the military training stuff. But I don't really like that way of teaching. So if I do videos, I may put them out there, but we're planning, at least at first, to release them to patrons on Patreon, just because it's going to be more conversational. It's going to be, here, look, this is the way you're definitely supposed to do it. I actually do it this way because it's a little quicker and easier, but there's a hazard associated with that. So I don't want to put out knowledge where people can say, hey, that's not the safest way to do it, or so-and-so recommends you do this. I'd rather just kind of let you guys know what I do. And if you want to take that and adapt to it, great. And if not, that's okay too. So I was thinking about doing some of those. So we're going to make a few as we have time and maybe put them out there, at least first for patrons, and then maybe we'll start releasing.
Yeah. And then we were looking to do some other kind of how-tos, I guess, of, like just what we've learned through our travels. Cause we know a lot of you guys are either on or starting a trip or planning a trip, like similar to what we have been doing. And so we have, some things that we've just figured out, border crossings, little stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've been working on like a wardrobe. Like, what do you want to bring when you're going on a long trip like this?
We've been trying to whittle down, and we're just finally getting there after, almost 3 years of what do you actually want to take that can work? What shoes can work for the hike and going into the city, going to dinner and driving all day, et cetera. So you're trying to find limited things that work for many options. I'm excited to see the border crossing one put together. We've done some shots of it, but didn't really like how it turned out. So we're going to redo some of that. But that one's really good because that was probably the most obvious knowledge that we felt like we had gained as we did the trip was just border crossing after border crossing. They were always a little bit scary, but man, by the end of it, we really had it down. You walk up, you know how to dress, how to act, how to kind of move things along.
It's something that's really intimidating, or it was for me at least, like before we started the trip, to like wonder, am I like not doing a ton of research that I should be doing before I go? Am I not going to be able to get some sort of paperwork once I'm down here? And because I wasn't smart enough to research it. So it's like super overwhelming. But in reality, it's not actually that overwhelming. So, but just being able to share that knowledge, because when we were leaving, I wasn't able to find that information.
I think that was the hardest info to find. Is there's the books. There's a lot of good books, and I can't think of the name. There's the one that's, don't go to Mexico, you'll die. And it's sort of tongue in cheek. And it had good border crossing info. And there's another one that had as well, but it was dated, right? As soon as the book is finished, it's sort of already dated. And we pull up to a border crossing where iOverlander then, which can be, as you know from our videos, we sort of love-hate iOverlander. But it would have, like 2 weeks ago, somebody took a aerial shot of Google Earth and drew which buildings are which, because they moved them all. They're like, that's no longer the police station. They shut that down, turned it into Aduana. Police is now over there, da-da-da. So yeah, some of that knowledge was changing so fast. It was really hard to find. So we wanted to do something on not so much, here's the info you need for the specific Ecuador border crossing, but here's how we found it best. And I think that'll be
kind of the general process,
applicable.
So that you have knowledge going into all of these countries. It's kind of applicable to everything. So, Happy Camper IPA. I like that one. That's a good one.
It's good stuff.
Go ahead.
So yeah, that's kind of what the things we're looking to do. As far as on this, you guys ask away any questions that you have.
We'll open it up.
We have
to
stuff
questions.
we can go into, certainly. And, some of our main questions we get are, how do you afford to do this? And those of you that know us a little better or follow along have seen a lot of the things we're doing to try and save up or spend less while we travel and that sort of thing. But that's definitely a video we're going to do. But we were going to do how we saved for this and then how much we spent per month. But then also go into some of the people we met, on both ends of the spectrum, the folks who spend more on food per month than anything else because they're going to the nicest restaurant in every town. And that's awesome. They're experiencing that, right? And then the folks who are traveling on a bicycle or in a truck, like our buddy Miguel in Australia, who's traveling in a free truck and is penny pinching, So we were somewhere in the middle, maybe on the cheaper end of the spectrum, but somewhere kind of in the middle. So we want to do that.
Yeah, I think that would be good. And then some just basic gear videos that we like, which sounds kind of cheesy, but we've also along our travels found gear that is useful and that we like. So we wanted to share those with you guys.
Do a Goose update video to let you guys know. I mean, he is extraordinary as a truck. I mean, we've gotten home and we went straight into this work. He's running anywhere from 8 to 12 hours. It depends on what schedule we work in what area. And there's a lot of reasons that changes, but essentially minimum 8 hours a day, he's running and he's wheeling. And I mean, pretty good Jeep trails. Sometimes it's just corrugated, silty roads and stuff, but he's getting beat on constantly. And we've just had zero issues. Issues. One thing we did do is trying to lighten them up. So I want to go through a video on the things we took off of them. We removed the awning, and it's a great awning. It's a Hannibal awning, so it's freestanding and everything. But we're never taking the time to set it up. When we finish working for the day, the sun's down, and we're not hanging out under an awning, and it's just a battering ram hitting trees. So we pulled that off. And I think we pulled another 120 pounds out of the inside of the truck just in, why are we carrying this? In a foreign country, we needed to carry this spare part or this spare part because we couldn't find it. Here in the US, any Napa will have that. Any Toyota dealer will have that. So let's stop carrying so many redundant items. So for us, we've lightened him up, and it's been a huge improvement in just how he feels and goes down the highway. So.
Hello in Brazil. We would love to go back. I'm dying to go to Brazil again. We didn't get to spend enough time there, in my opinion. And the food is good. The people are amazing. The view. I mean, I'm super excited to spend more time in Brazil. So
that was like not that we didn't think Brazil would be amazing, but we didn't have a huge plan to do a big loop through Brazil. And then thanks to Tim and Shannon at Planet Overland, he wanted to go check out something in there, the BR319. So we went in there and went. You saw in the videos thus far all the Brazil we got to do. So we don't go back at all in the videos, but we loved it. I mean, everywhere we went, people were pulling up next to you and are like, welcome, where are you from? What are you doing? You're walking down the street, the same thing. So it was amazing. So we absolutely want to go back to Brazil. And we think for the big cities will probably be easier just to fly in at some point in our life and explore them on foot because they're so big. It's like trying to go and see New York when you have an overland truck you have to deal with, right? So, but yeah, we can't wait to get back down to a lot of the countries, but Brazil for us is going to be one we got to go a lot deeper.
Have you ever regretted not running sliders? This is a pertinent question if you follow us on Instagram.
Hey, Scott, just twice, 2 specific times. One was just after building Goose as he sort of sits today. We cut his roof off. We had the pop top, we redid it. We almost burnt him to the ground, all that. And then I went and we wanted to do a serious trail. So there's a trail, is it Hackberry? I can't remember what the name of the trail is in Arizona, but it's a fairly serious trail that you can't take a stock 4x4 on. And there's big boulders, and these boulders occasionally move, and one moved. And, I have the best spotter in the world, and she's a fantastic driver. But when it gets, she's fantastic. When it gets really technical, she wants me to drive usually just because I have more experience and more time with Goose. And so she was spotting and a rock moved, and we did put a little crinkle right there just in the rocker. So I regretted it right then. And then when we slid into that tree in Guatemala, a slider, if it stuck out enough, would have protected us. So it's tough. I mean, the sliders that were on my old truck I had built, and they were fairly light. The sliders that were on Goose when I bought him, somebody else had put on Metal Tech, great brand, great sliders, but they were like 170 pounds or something. I hope I'm not misquoting that too high away from, where it was, but it was almost 200 pounds. It's more than a person on the truck that we're just carrying around the world.
And 90% of the time, it's not something that we need. So
for overlanding, not at all, really. It was that tree in Guatemala, which is a random sort of thing. And you saw that crazy day going up to all that. We would have made a lot of different choices if we weren't trying to help someone else out. But so, no, I don't really regret it. But then now that we're back in the U.S. and we're kind of like, let's go to Moab next. The Western U.S. is like a big playground. And you definitely, at least I do, have this desire to push ourselves. So you saw the Instagram post a couple of days ago. That was a trail called Steam Shovel Trail, which they say is really not for trucks. It's just a UTV dirt bike trail. And we needed to go up it for work. So we were heading up it. And there was times I was kind of wishing we had the sliders like I posted about. So a couple of times we've regretted it. In the US, I think I'd maybe build a light duty set, not that they're so light duty they're going to get crushed, but light duty in the sense that I can pivot around a rock on them, with a little kick out on a slider. That's really handy when you're in tight boulders. And if we wanted to go and do the Rubicon, I wouldn't do it without some decent sliders.
Yeah.
So I could see throwing them back on, but for overlanding, definitely never missed them.
No.
Ben, no, I will not be your friend. I'm sorry.
We know we don't like you already.
Jeez, harsh. Take it up another level. What's your favorite tool? I mean, it's tough. I think we didn't need many tools on the trip. You saw me replacing shock bushings and some suspension link bushings. I think for us, having that good socket set was nice. When I wheeled in the US, I didn't carry a socket set. I just carried open-ended wrenches and a ratcheting wrench. And man, having those sockets made everything faster. So that was a nice tool to have. And then I'm a little bit knife obsessed. So I loved every little knife I had. And we got a couple of knives in, I think that was in Argentina, like Mendoza or something like that were the gaucho knives, and they were really cool, and they were made out of bone or something else like that. So it's not really a tool. It's not a needed tool, but
I think
I loved it.
A shovel probably is pretty practical, like if you were to bring.
But I didn't bring the one that I like. So if you saw our gear video, I brought a shovel that I had since I started this cleanup thing a decade ago that I got for free because it was smaller and lighter. So we think in some ways we could have focused on being lightweight more, but when it came to the shovel, I regret not taking the good World War II. It's a folding shovel, but it's heavier and, something that I wish I would have taken over the small, compact tri-folding one that I have.
What do you guys still carry that you keep thinking you will use but never do? That was hard. We just took out so much stuff. And it's hard to get out of the mindset, especially when you're traveling in a place where you can't always get what you want or need. And so it's hard for me to get out of the mindset of like when you go to a grocery store and you're like, oh, they have like coconut milk. It's so rare. I should buy like 3 things of it. And here you're like, no, pretty much every grocery store will have it. It's fine. Just get what you need for, the week or something like that. But I think camera gear is hard, which is a random one because not everyone's going to carry camera gear, but I keep narrowing down camera gear. And then there's always something that I'm like, oh, but if I don't have that, it'll suck. But then how often do I use it? Not ever. So I think for me, camera gear is. And
we've gotten better at that. I think what we've decided to do while we're home and we're working is we have spent most of the money we've made off Patreon and YouTube to buy the best camera gear that we can. So when we leave, we're not going to have 4 cameras or 5 cameras. We're going to have a really nice camera, a good backup camera, some GoPros, and the drone, and then just be done. So that's definitely one. I think the other thing we were carrying for the first half of the trip, the first year and a half, was like freediving gear. We thought we'd be freediving like crazy, and in Baja we did. And then in Central America, you could pay to go freediving, or you could set up a spot, but it just didn't happen. And then in South America, most of the sort of sketchier areas were along the coast. And so we just didn't hang out on the beach much. And then the water, of course, gets really cold. So we carried a snorkel, mask, fins, freediving fins. So, 4 feet long and 2 sets. Yeah, of course. And God forbid we share. I promptly lost the freediving wetsuit that I had somewhere in Mexico.
My fault. I set it on the ground as a pillow while Tim was working on the truck, and then
I was replacing the shock bushings for the 17th time or whatever it was. And, you hold your head up and these muscles start getting tense. And so I asked her if she had something to put under my head, and it was my wetsuit. And the next morning we headed out. So there's a nice farmer rancher, the guy in the video, if you saw, who was on the quad with his family that invited us out to stay at the ranch. He's got a really nice freediving wetsuit. I hope he uses it.
Yeah, we realized it like 3 hours later, and we weren't going back for it.
I don't think it was just 3 hours. It was a full city, I think. But
I mean, it was a ways.
So that was probably the thing. High lift jack worth having. I don't personally think so. We use them a lot in training. For the military guys, they have a certain set of things that they have to carry. It depends on what division of the armed forces they're with. But some of the guys are like issued it. So, you have it. It's cool. Let's go ahead and use it. For me, everything it does, I can always find some other way. And so to me, it's just so big and so heavy that we've stopped carrying it. But that brings up something I don't think we've talked about yet, is that the Safe Jack, which we did the video on back right before we left, it's been great and it works wonderfully. But it's this big, heavy bottle jack with a plate that goes beneath it. The plate also works for high lifts. We got home and I missed my racing floor jack, which racing is just what people call them, but it's an aluminum floor jack, and we took the casters, which are the wheels, and everything heavy off of it. I welded a skid plate onto it, and there you go. It's a big ski that goes under your car, and the desert racing guys use them because in any sort of terrain, you just slide it under the race car. And then 2 pumps and the truck's in the air. It doesn't need any sort of base or stability thing to bolt onto it because the base is, that big, right? So it's stable on its own. So
It's a lot easier.
I went back to that. It's also lighter. So
Yeah.
I went back to that floor jack, and we're now carrying it in Goose again. And I'm so happy because the main thing you use a floor jack for or any sort of jack in a vehicle is just to change tires or to get the tire up and out of a ditch of mud or out of the sand or out of something, right? And that floor jack, you just go under 2 pumps, it's in the air. So I don't think the high lift's necessary to have. If you're super comfortable with it and you've used them for years, then you're going to gravitate towards it just like I gravitate towards the race jack, the floor jack. So if you like them, take it. But to me, it was just hard to carry, big to pack. Yes, they are dangerous, but not for anyone that's used them a lot and knows how to use them. So to me, it just wasn't a worthy item. We see people carrying high lift jacks that have a pretty stock vehicle. And I look at it and think to myself, what points could you jack off of? Because you don't. I'm a child, whatever. You don't have a front metal bumper and a rear metal bumper or rock sliders, and so you could use the wheel attachment that picks up the wheel, but you can't change the tire because the vehicle is being held in the air by the tire, right? So if you know the attachment I'm talking about, it makes sense. If not, basically it's a high lift jack attachment that goes into your alloy or steel wheel and uses it to hold. So I get frustrated with them in the sense that I don't think they do enough for how much you got to carry.
Okay, Ben, we do actually like you, just so everyone knows. What's the best stove configuration and brand you have found? I love the stove that we have.
Yeah. So we partner steel.
Partner
So we fully admit this is like one of those purchases before the trip. We've talked about we bought the fancy twin ARB compressor. It's great, but we're never in a rush to air up on a trip like this. Now that we're home and we're airing up every day at the end of the day, yeah, okay, it's nice to have a fast one. For the trip, don't waste your money on a fancy compressor. In the same sense, we went for the nicest stove, the stove that I'd always wanted, which was a partner steel stove. It's made in Idaho. It's aluminum. It's TIG welded together. And I guess the story I've heard anyways is it's these rafting guys who all your gear basically has to be able to not rust because you're always on the river, and you have to be able to throw it to shore, and that can't hurt it, right? So it's this very overbuilt stove that overlanders sort of glamped onto, because it's fancy.
Yeah.
But it really is good. It takes the same amount of propane and makes it go further than our old Coleman. The stove I used for probably 20, 25 years before this partner steel stove was my dad's old Coleman 2-burner, from the 80s. And it worked fine too.
Yeah, this is much more consistent. So it's easier to cook on it, I think, than just a Coleman. And it is sturdy. We don't throw it. But
no. But it's one of those things. As soon as we bought it, I was like, wow, it's $400 and whatever stove. But it's our home, right? So for camping, I think it's a little silly to buy it. But for living in your truck, doing an around the world trip, I mean, cooking is the main thing we're doing in the truck every day besides driving. So to us, it was absolutely worth it. And then we have an 11-pound propane tank, and that has just been amazing. I mean, you can. If you just make dinners essentially on it, you can string it out for almost 6 months of cooking daily on that.
Yeah,
so
it's pretty crazy.
Pretty extraordinary. And then if you're making coffee, eggs with it every day, maybe half that. But it's been amazing.
Yeah, it's lasted
so big tank,
a really long
and the
time.
partner steel stove I think is huge.
The
interior renovation. So Terry, I talked with him a little bit. He asked a question about our interior setup and maybe measuring our current one. Our current interior setup looks good. It looks like what you think you're supposed to have for an overland truck: a bench and a countertop, right? And that sort of makes sense. We even have the fancy Lagoon sliding table or whatever. We never move the table. It just sits there static all the time. And then the main issue we found, not so much in the Western US or Baja, but as soon as you got into the harsher weather climates, more crowded places. So Patagonia, the winds are so strong. If you pop the top, it'll rip it clean off. And so we would keep the top down, but we found we didn't have a sufficient downstairs bed. We had a bench seat that ended before the length of a human. So we'd stack up our clothing and bags down there. And then the aisleway, she would try and squeeze into, and it was too tight. And so we basically just not sleep. We got to the point where we spent many nights in the front 2 seats of Goose, not really sleeping.
It's actually starting in the next episode that I'm working on right now.
Oh yeah.
And it's the
That we-
first
for the
night
first time we
that
have to
we
do it.
couldn't pop the top, and we have
Yeah.
to sleep down, and I sleep in
Yeah.
the front seat.
Yeah, and you guys have seen us really exhausted in the videos, but there's going to be a few more that are even more so.
Yeah.
So that was an issue. And then we thought back, you know, all those camps in Central America, in Mexico, in South America, where it was crowded and we were at a campsite, and there's the smoky wet wood fire that's going, or the whole town, it's their trash burning day, so the air is filled with smoke, and you basically have fabric between you and the outside. That's pretty miserable, and we wished we had been able to camp down below. Or if you're at a paid campsite, that's where folks go to party on the weekends, you know, and so you have really loud music, and maybe even like we'd have 2 cars competing to see who could win the loudness thing. So getting back to the interior,
Yeah.
all of that made us want to make the primary bed down below and the optional bed up top. So, hey, it's hot. You're on a remote beach in Panama, some of those amazing beaches. Great, go up top. Or, you know, 2 days before that amazing beach that I'm picturing, we were more in the jungle, and the little no-see-ums came in and we were covered in bites.
Yeah.
And so that night I'd be downstairs as soon as you feel them starting to bite. So for us, having a really good downstairs bed, maybe even the primary, is going to be the biggest change.
Mm-hmm.
For the Western US, Goose is actually pretty well set up. So it's tough right now to take the time to spend weeks changing his interior and spending the money. But on the trip, for sure, the interior change would be keep the bed downstairs.
Yeah, I think we'd change the front seats out as well to something lighter and a bit more comfortable. That would be another just decent change.
Yeah, you live in those seats. And so, you know, that price on a Scheelman seat, and I'm not saying that's the brand to get. That's the one I looked at before we left. It's insane sounding. It's like $1,000 or more, $1,500 per seat. But that's my home now. I live in that seat. You know, the last couple of days this week, we were driving for 12 hours straight, you know, without really getting out except to go to the restroom. So that was pretty tiring.
You mentioned you don't have a heater. Would you ever add one if you're heading to a colder climate? If you guys, by the way, don't follow We Will Roam, check out their videos. They're in Australia, and we really enjoy watching their videos.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think for us, the hard part is, you know, for where I would go for fun, for like weekends, for even months, or where we're going to head now, hopefully that it's getting cold, I don't need a heater, so we're fine. We bought some nicer down jackets, and so we spent a few $100 on that. And a few nights ago, the water in our water can froze, but we were up in our, you know, pop top, basically in the ambient temperature, you know, because you're not even down below where you could build some warmth. And we were fine. It was cold, but it wasn't that bad. So here, I don't know if I would add it if I was purely traveling randomly for pleasure. But because this is our home, literally, and we'd like it to be or something like this for a long time, yeah, I think we would add it. But I think if it's a big cost or if it's hard to add to your truck, it's pretty far down the list. Most of the Pan American, you're going to be too hot, not too cold.
Mm-hmm. And when we were in places like Cotopaxi, where we would, you know, we were there for a couple weeks, and so we were in a cold climate for a couple weeks, and I would like boil water and put it in a water bottle in my Nalgene actually, and just put this at my feet, and that warmed me up.
In the middle of the night, I would steal it, and then she'd wake up cold, and it was a whole thing. But no, but yeah, there's always a way around it. And I do think that in general, we were too hot most of the time, not too cold. But yeah, for like, if we're going to head up to Alaska, if we're going to do the Road of Bones through Russia or something like that in Siberia, yeah, a heater would be amazing. Yeah. For us, it doesn't make sense. People have said, just get a little buddy heater. And it's like, well, now you have this hot thing. Our bed up top, we're basically shoulder to shoulder up there. There's nowhere to set that. And if I set it below, you've got now essentially something that could start a fire sitting down there away from us, and I can't even see it because once the bed slats are in, you're basically locked out of the compartment down below.
And there's no room above our heads really, and none on our feet.
How many miles on the cruiser? Like 240, I think, about 240,000. So he just keeps eating up miles, doesn't seem to notice or anything. So yeah, he's just adding up the miles now.
Let's see. We don't really cook inside Goose. But so there's not really any smells.
Well, but you do, but it's more not emergency cooking. It's actually more than once a week probably, but we use, what is it? MSR reactor. Yeah. It's like a different version of a jet boil. It's actually a little quicker to get to boiling. So that's our main cooking inside the truck. And so we use that to make soup. We'll use that to make coffee. So every day we've got a little cook setup going inside the truck at some point. but we don't do the full meals inside. Usually we will open the tailgate, and then that back flap that we have that we use sail track to slide in, we'll have that sitting there. And even if it's raining or if it's just cold, we'll have the stove on the tailgate and we'll cook like that. So,
but I don't think even if we were cooking inside, it would make, I don't think it would.
No, because every day the windows are down. I mean, you're moving out the smells. It's definitely not going to build up, I don't think, unless you spill a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Will we be doing more videos exploring in Tonto? Yes, we are super excited to do more exploring in Tonto. We just had him for a couple weeks when we were in Arizona, so we did an oil change and all his fluids and took care of him. So he's doing good, and we're excited to have some time to travel on him again. Yeah,
we took him to the spa, so to speak. So we when we got to Phoenix, we just gave him all the love that we thought he had sort of been missing the last time we were home, because we just took him out on a road trip last year through New Mexico. So we did all that tune-up stuff. As usual, he started right up, didn't even need a jump start on the battery, which is crazy to me that year after year, the old Costco battery just starts him up. But yeah, he's been running really good, and we're looking forward to doing some trips in him, hopefully around New Year's and stuff like that. When we can't be doing this work, we're going to do some trips in him. So
yeah.
Go-to easy meals. I think for us, man, stir fries. But that's how I ate, for years and years before this trip too, is like I would just I had a garden in the backyard, and I would take all these vegetables and peppers and throw them in a pan, and then be like, well, I don't want it to taste like last night, so I'll use some teriyaki instead of, a curry or whatever. So we still kind of cook like that. We take a bunch of vegetables, throw them in a pan, and then add pasta if we're more hungry.
Yeah. I think we'll do a video probably on some of our, like, how we cook. And a while back I did a blog post about some of the stuff that we would cook on the road, and had, I think, even little recipes. So, but I'd like to do a video on that. And but one pot meals, if possible, is kind of our go-to, so we don't have to clean up too much.
What's the most elaborate meal on your trip? I mean, it's tough. I'd say when you meet up with friends, that was for us the coolest part of the trip, I think, because we are kind of, I think we're always working on something, the website, the videos, something. And if we're not doing that, then I get antsy and I want to move, and we both want to see what's over the next hill. But when we met up with people, that's when we found ourselves doing these big elaborate meals. We had some friends come down and visit us from the US. We'd meet up with Miguel in Cafayate, in the video. I think it was just the last video. Cafayate, excuse me. But, we started making pizzas. And once we started making pizzas, that was a often meal that we would do. We would buy steaks, and one of us would do this course and the other one would do that course. And it got much more elaborate because it was the fun of just hanging out with friends around a campfire. So for us, the biggest meals were always when we met up with some friends and decided, you know what, let's go for it. Let's make some big old meal. You take this on, you take this on. And it was the best, actually.
So much fun.
So
much fun to share it. And
And there's some of that coming up. So we meet up again with Miguel from Australia, and then another guy named Dan on a motorcycle. And we try and tow Miguel surfing in a river in Argentina off a motorcycle, and it doesn't go well. I'll just say that. Sorry for the motorcycle anyways. But yeah, so that was always our most elaborate meals, but they were kind of varied, steaks and potatoes. And we'd try and we'd flash boil, potatoes and try and make chips or French fries. And other times we'd make these elaborate pizzas, and we'd all make our own separate ones, and a lot of cooking on the fire and stuff like that.
Thoughts on overlanding with something small, like a Suzuki Samurai?
Absolutely. I mean, I think for two, it'd be a little tight and tougher, but I think of it, to me anyways, I would think of it more like a motorcycle. Mm-hmm. I would plan to camp for a certain number of days, and then you'd get like an Airbnb or something, right?
Hostel or something, yeah.
Yeah. And then on the other end of the spectrum, the folks traveling an Earth Roamer or a Dodge with an XP camper, even if coronavirus has them locked down somewhere, they've got like 2 rooms and a full bathroom and a shower. Like, they're just in the truck, right? So to me, it's just you would just be one step closer to a motorcycle than Goose is, right? You might just slightly more often go and grab a hotel or a hostel or something like that.
Yeah.
So I would absolutely take a Suzuki Samurai or even our FJ40.
Yeah, we really like traveling in that. I mean,
you'll get worn out a little bit faster. You have a little bit less interior space and a little less comfort, but man, I think it would be awesome.
Yeah.
And people love it. I think the more unique your vehicle is, the more people get excited about it too. So.
Spare tire on the back of an overland rig, which side makes the most sense?
I've seen people go on about this and I can't figure out why. To me, I mean, if I look in the rearview mirror and I can see out it, I'm happy. If I could flip our fuel cans and our tire right now, I might, because then the fuel can would be close to the gas door and I wouldn't have to remove it from that swing out. And I can use a super siphon, which is a siphon where you just shake it and it gets the flow going and it would go right into the tank. But with the auxiliary tank, we don't really ever use the, jerry can. It sits there for months at a time. And finally we dump it when we feel like the fuel might be getting so old, we should change it. So I could flip it, but yeah, I don't know. I've seen people debate on it so much, but I don't think it matters. I think it depends on the rest of the setup. Like for us, we've got propane, the fold down table, all that's kind of in this area we're used to. So to change it would more throw us out of whack, I think.
Yeah, I guess if it was closer, you could do gas from the gas can without taking it off. But
yeah,
that'd be the only thing that I can think of.
Yeah. Best camp ever. Oh man. I think honestly,
impossible question.
It's an impossible question, but because so much, and this is why people ask us opinions so much, and I'm not hesitant to answer, but I realize that we'll talk to someone and before we've told them how much we liked that country or that area or that campsite or that beach, they'll start telling us how horrible it was and how much they hated it and how no one should ever go there. And you go, oh, okay. And vice versa. There's some that we've been like, man, that was rough. It was just,
even between us too, like Bolivia, Tim loved Bolivia and I liked it, but it was definitely not my favorite, but just between even us two.
So I think take everything that people who've done these trips say with a grain of salt. I think there's good meaning in all of it, but I think that some of it is so location based. I mean, like I often we both speak really highly of Guatemala and I do like it. And I do like all the ruins out there. The history is amazing. Yeah. But I also think if we hadn't met all these wonderful people, I would have gone, yeah, it's great. And then we moved on to the next country. But instead we met Byron and Byron introduced us to Jose and then, Juan Carlos. And we now, I feel like we could go to Guatemala and just every city have someone to call and say, what are you up to? You want to hang out? You want to go on a trip? You want to go camping? Show me your favorite spot. And so that changes your entire opinion on a place. So favorite campsite, that one in the canyon in the last video was amazing. Awesome because that is what my opinion, that's what my preconceived notion of the trip was going to be. We're going to these remote places where no one's going to be. We've got a truck and the skills to get us remote. And then most of the trip, you're just in cities and they're not big cities, but you go down a dirt road for 6 hours and it's bumpy and there's a bunch of little huts at the end of it. And they're cool if you camp there, but you're not remote. You're not discovering something remote or in some far off place. You're just in someone's little far off the path town and the people are wonderful. And so, I think when we hit that canyon, it was the first time I went, this is what I thought the whole trip was going to be. And it's great that it wasn't actually, because I had to let that go.
We'd also just come off a long stint of being in populated areas.
True.
So I think it made it even sweeter that we were out there. But I mean, I think every country I could tell you a favorite spot. But
I mean, camping right next to Lake Atitlan. And you were staying at this paid campsite, but it was this wonderful, crazy old Frenchman who'd come by and he'd offer you wine. And he's like, I've got another truckload of shrimp coming from the coast today. You want shrimp? And he was just trying to get you to buy some more shrimp every day. And that was wonderful. And the view was it looked fake. It looked completely fake. So,
so many good campsites.
Yeah, too many good campsites.
Yeah. Tell us 3 important skills for overlanding. Go with the flow. I think that's important one.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest actually is I like mechanical things, mountain bikes, dirt bikes, just anything like that. And I realize a lot of that is a control thing. We like being in our little thing. We like modifying it. We like going places. But overlanding is actually the inverse of that. It's going into other people's worlds and countries and towns and going, so what do you guys eat here? What do you guys do? And it's sort of great that it shakes you up a little bit. So the greatest skill for overlanding, I think, would be to just let go of all of your preconceived notions. And every town you walk into, put yourself out there and go, how's it going? If you have a genuine gut instinct that something's bad, okay, fine. Yeah. But I would say 99% of my light gut instincts of uncomfortableness were more of like my own discomfort with showing up in a town and putting myself out there. Every time we did, it was always rewarded. So I think that's probably some of the best skills is that. I mean, know how to plug a tire, know how to do basic maintenance on your vehicle, but you don't need to have to work on it at the level we do, because every time that we've needed something, someone's offered to help us or a mechanic has come out of the woodwork to fix it. And our friends who have no mechanical ability, they still get it fixed.
Yeah.
They even meet some more people because, you know, they end up staying at someone's house while their engine's rebuilt, and then that person introduces them to another. And so I don't think you need to worry too much about the mechanical side. Just go. The world's filled with nice people, and you'll just meet more of them if you have an unreliable truck. So
yeah. Yeah.
How many pre-COVID episodes are left to publish? Number wise, we're trying to figure that out because we don't know how we break them up. You know, there's big gaps coming up where we just do some highway miles to get to Buenos Aires and then over to here. But I would say at least 6 left probably.
Yeah, it's
Maybe
tough
8.
because I wish I was more ahead and could tell you how many episodes, but because we've been working, I'm literally working on the episode that is to come out next week.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not far ahead on that.
So like tonight or in the morning, we'll probably finish this week's episode and then post it to Patreon. And then on Friday, it'll be released. And then we won't have edited probably at all with the weather. It's snowing here and we're working until it's dark. And then we need to make some food and set up camp. And then we go to bed, and then you wake up, you know, before the sun, because there's so little daylight time. We want to work every moment that the sun's up. And then we, you know, break camp, work all day, and then, you know, do it all again. So the only time we've been editing is when we finally stop on the weekend. So we get to an Airbnb or a hotel or a campground, and then it's pretty much not quite 100%, but 90% of the time that we're stationary on the weekends, we're just working on videos, the website, blog, answering people's questions, and then we go back at it. So I wish we were more caught up. But
yeah, we're super excited to catch up and then like have some current adventures that are closer in real time so that we can, you know, people might know where we are and we can meet up with people and that sort of thing. So
that's part of the goal. When we do get caught up is to have the discipline that if we start getting behind on the videos, stop traveling. We're in control of our travel, right? We didn't always feel like that on the trip because we thought it was going to be like a 1-year trip or a whatever. We're always flying home to work at Overland Expo or other events. But when we do get caught up is to, if we get behind, just stop and edit until we're caught up or very close to caught up, you know, within like a month, I think is where we want to be, hopefully permanently. I'm still reading to catch up.
How would you go about planning a crossing of the Darien Gap?
For me, I would say go motorcycle and go with, you know, the 8 toughest people that you know, something like that. Really, I mean, we have friends who are trying to do stuff and want to cross the Darien, and I hope someday it happens, you know, but it's awesome. It's kind of a novelty. I mean, in a sense, it's not going to actually be driving or riding anything. It's mostly winching and pushing, and it's just an exercise in a crazy thing. It's like trying to do, I don't know. It's trying to do something for the sake of doing it, right? So I think it's awesome, and I think that if you were going to do it, the smallest vehicle or a motorcycle is the best way to go.
Local knowledge would be helpful.
Tons of local knowledge, and frankly, it's so dangerous too. It seems like you have to end up paying off like the FARC or whatever, you know, sort of pseudo military group controls the region at the time. You have to make friends with them, pay them off, get the guides. It's a big thing, but I think it would be amazing.
Yeah, I'd love
all
to
the
do
vehicle.
it.
If we could, all the vehicle ones that have done it though, were all pretty big money, or like the Jeep group that did it. Everyone argues over like, well, they floated it here because it's essentially a marsh, right? So I don't know. I don't know how to tackle it. I think a lot of money would help, and then just committing to it and knowing that it could consume the next 3 years of your life to get it done.
Yeah.
But I've seen the guys who've done it on motorcycles more recently, and that's kind of inspiring because what if a route started to blow up, you know, in the jungle there and get slightly widened up where you'd actually be able to drive versus just winch most of the distance or float on a raft or something like that. So,
what overlanders do you follow?
We Will Roam.
Yeah.
Our buddies Planet Overland, Tim and Shannon, who we traveled with. Trying to think. There's so many people these days.
Some of the bigger ones like 4-wheel drive action.
I think those guys are funny. I just like Shano and Graham. I just think they're good. They seem like buddies. And so, but for us, we don't, you know, we do so much off-roading that I like watching videos of like, you know, Baja
Sailing.
1000, catching up on that. And then, sailing. Like that's our escapism. So we're doing this. I don't really want to watch somebody wheeling and go, oh, you know, technically you should have done this here or that, you know, and da-da-da. And so it's harder for me to watch the off-roading stuff. And a lot of it, I know what I like about off-roading, but a lot of the off-roading folks, I don't know. I don't know what they like about it. I can't relate as much. Another good one's Venture 4-wheel drive. Chris is awesome. Such a great guy. But, we don't have a ton of time to watch stuff. So when we do, we check in with a few friends of vlogs or blogs or whatever, read up or watch videos on what they're doing. And then we shift gears and go completely to sailing channels.
Yeah. And
just because it's so different than what we're doing that we're like, wow, someday I want to sail around the world. And that's our escapism. So,
yeah. What tip do you have to practice leave no trace on a long overlanding trip?
I think if you've got it down for, sort of the at-home stuff, you'll just apply it to the trip. It's sad that, again, the iOverlander, kind of the blessing and curse is if you go to an iOverlander campsite, people are above ground pooping everywhere, and it's gross. It's disgusting. There's toilet paper everywhere. There's
you can't walk everywhere.
Yeah, we've been traveling with somebody who was saying that they emptied their Sprinter van's black tank at a lookout. So like you pull up to a lookout and you wonder why it smells, and it's, that everywhere. And so it's tough. I think you can only really control yourself. And so if you're used to digging cat holes and, with your shovel and taking care of all that, you're good. For trash, that is actually a bit of a skill that we had to pick up. Before we left, we had the big trasharoo on the back. We've actually switched to a jerry can that I cut the top off and put a hinge on years ago, but we'll try and show that in the update to Goose.
Yeah.
But we, in general, have been using this big trasharoo. And so I had a giant hefty bag in there like we use in the US. No one in Mexico, Central, or South America will accept giant bags of your trash.
It's really hard to find a place to throw that out. And
so we changed. And now anytime we go to the supermarket or the store or even like the little street markets, those little plastic bags that you usually try and avoid, we'll make sure we get a few of those and build up a little supply, because at a gas station, there is always a little trash can. It might be the top that big, but you can always get rid of a little bit of trash that way. Sadly, the other way to do it is like Baja and a lot of these countries, the way we enter town seems to always be through the dump. I don't know why, but whenever we're coming into a town on some remote dirt road, we go, oh, we're at one of the dumps of town. And it feels weird, but we've gotten used to being able to just drive right up to it. And, you go just a chain link area filled with trash and, you just unload your trash there. That's because that's where it's going to go when you drop it at the gas station anyway.
And a lot of times they're burning it.
Yep.
But yeah, I think if we were in the US and were able to get biodegradable bags, like little, still the same size, like a smaller bag, but that way it's also not, it's going to degrade. It's not the plastics that's going to last forever.
Yeah.
That's probably what I would do. But on the road, we didn't have access to getting anything like that. So we just used grocery bags.
Yep.
Just make sure they go in the trash.
Yeah, I know it's tough. And I think as far as leave no trace on terms of trails, everything out there in the world, there weren't like recreational 4x4 trails in most of these countries. And so if you're on a trail, it's just a road. It's just a road to a guy's house. It might be gnarly and it might be like low range, triple locked up differentials trying to get up it because it's muddy, but it's still just a road. So the locals aren't going to be happy if you rut it out and get your truck stuck. We've had friends tell us stories of them getting stuck in their big giant Unimog, which is kind of a drawback of these big heavy trucks, on a road in Mexico. And then it took a few days, but they came along with the big dozer and towed them out. But then they made them pay for the recovery. They made them pay to get the tractor out there, and they had to pay to repair all the roads that they had driven on because they had rutted them up. So, you do want to try and leave no trace everywhere. It's definitely tough on a trip like this, I think, because you have to, every country has a different set of like rules. Where do people get rid of trash here? I haven't seen a public trash can the whole country because a lot of them don't. So that was definitely a tough thing. Thoughts on 80 series pulling base camp for Western US overlanding with the way the trailer killed the 1FZ at elevation. I mean,
be going slow.
I think if I were towing a trailer, I would become a master in lightweight, the trailer being lightweight, the truck being lightweight. I would do whatever I could to gear it properly and then keep it lightweight. Cause we in Colorado felt like, my mom tells a story of being in a Volkswagen bus on the Autobahn and she's at the back window and my dad's driving and they would be like, okay, I think you're clear. You can pass this car. And they'd start to pass and a Porsche comes flying along. Get back over. So we felt like that in Colorado. We're going up, the passes there and everyone drives like 85, like California speeds. And old Goose is doing maybe 60.
Yeah.
And that's as good as he can do. A few hills he couldn't carry, I think it would be third gear. and we had to go to second, which is like 40, 45 miles an hour. So, I mean, I think it'd be tough on an 80, but as long as you're in seeing the world pace, who cares?
Yeah.
Just stay in the right lane. There are slower cars out there in the world than a 1FZ towing a trailer. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. But yeah, it's going to be slow. But the truck's already slow. So.
Yeah. Did you have to use the fuel in the Jerry for emergency use on this trip?
No, because we built that 18.5-gallon auxiliary tank. We always just use those two. And then the jerry can was sort of the super emergency. I'm going to plan to use what's in here. So like in this next episode, we had filled up in this one town and we drive for like 2 or 3 days to get out to this old mine. And when we were there, we were not quite at half fuel, meaning not just the main tank, but the main and the auxiliary, we were still above half. So I felt good. But if I had done some calculation wrong, or if on the way back we got lost, or if we wanted to go see something, the jerry is kind of the extra over my calculation. So we never had to, but I do think it's good to bring a jerry can or a fuel can of some sort, because we use that fuel 7-10 times to give away. You know, we'd be in the middle of nowhere and there's a guy pushing a scooter and he's out of fuel, and he'll try and pay you. That people are so nice and they'll try and pay, but you just say, no, let me give you a gallon so your scooter works and you can get out of here. Or we ran into a guy at a ranch in Baja who says, I haven't driven my car to town in a couple months because I don't have enough fuel quite to make it. And so again, he wanted to pay us, but we wouldn't accept him. We just, give him some fuel. So that 5 gallons, it didn't take from my main supply hidden underneath the truck.
Yeah.
So it became something I wasn't too attached to. And it ended up being something we could help others out with. So
it was also nice to have something to carry. Like if you happen to run out of gas, to have something that you could take with you.
Yeah.
And then in Bolivia, because of all the government rules, sometimes you'd have to get gas in that because they weren't allowed to give you gas in your vehicle.
Yeah.
At a certain price. So that it came in handy that way.
What is the one thing car not related that you would have done differently? Not car related. I mean, in a perfect world, if I could speak, both of us be very fluent in Spanish, it would have opened up more doors. So that would have been nice if I could have just snapped my fingers. But obviously, if I wanted that bad enough, I just would have made it happen. So I don't know if that's something I can really say that it's one thing I would do differently. I hope I would.
Yeah, I think I would go in with a slightly different mindset. Like for me, I kind of like learned it along the trip, but I wish I could have been where I am at the end of doing this traveling, of not being as worried or afraid of things, because it's silly, but I think that's what I would most wish that I did differently, is just not be as afraid.
Yeah. No, we were just talking to Emma and Aunt We Will Roam, and about maybe like what if somebody started in South America versus in North America, and our friends Planet Overland actually did that. And in a sense, when they got to the more crazy, tight, constricted countries of sort of Central America, you would have had a little more traveling under your belt. So that would be kind of nice. So I'd like to go back to Central America now, having done the whole trip, and know that, things seem crazy. Yeah, things seem sort of unsafe, or, it's okay. This is just how it is. Just relax, go with the flow. And so that would be kind of a nice thing if I could just, do that.
Class 1 or Class 7, Tim?
I think Class 1. I mean, Class 7s are cool, but because they look like a truck, but essentially you're building it off a frame rail. So it's like Class 8, Class 7. You have to start with a truck, which just inhibits you. And I think because when I started racing, the guys I met in Arizona were buggy guys. So we built a buggy. And so the idea of a trophy truck, it's a buggy, but with a truck body on it. So really buggies are better in every way. And if you race a Class 7, like my buddy Danny, you're just racing something unnecessarily slower than it has to be for the same amount of money. So
I knew he would have an opinion. I'm in Costa Rica. 2 options for 80s. Number 1, those built for this market that have a diesel, and number 2, those imported from the U.S. Assuming all things are equal, triple locked, etc. What would you choose?
I mean, for the cool factor, us Americans always seem to lean towards the diesel. I have to say, I still would love a diesel truck. I like the idea that when we do spring a leak in our gas tank, like we had on the trip, the fuel leaking out's not nearly as flammable. When I'm working under the truck and that whole area feels like the fumes are pretty heavy, it's a little bit scarier. So in a safety sense, I go diesel, in the sense that like in Bolivia, I had to change the timing on the distributor because the fuel was so bad. We had friends who were driving a brand new 70 series. Well, in Europe, they're no longer diesel. they come with the same engine as a 4Runner or a Tacoma in the US, a very advanced, very good V6, but they couldn't run on the Bolivian fuel because it was probably 70 something octane. It was so low, the engine was going into safe mode. Our gasoline truck's old enough to retard the timing and take care of that. So I'm just kind of throwing out both the pluses and minuses. So I think that it's nice that a diesel, it doesn't matter what the octane is, as long as you have enough filtration to get water and particulates out, it'll run, right? But fuel, gasoline, I mean, you need to have a little bit better quality. So I don't know. I mean, I definitely I've taken a step back from thinking diesel is the absolute best because so many friends with diesel trucks, imported or otherwise, spend so much money keeping them running like a top. And Goose, I mean, we did 80,000 miles. I didn't change spark plugs, wires, cap, rotor, fuel filter. I mean, that's kind of crazy. I should have probably done a lot of that, but it was so hard to find in some of these countries. Even in Argentina, where they had 80 series gasoline trucks, they said, yeah, it'd be 2 to 6 months. What? No, never mind. He's running fine. And so I just changed it all when we got home. On a diesel, you'd need a lot more maintenance, I think. So I say do whatever's cheapest, probably. Diesel's cool for sure if you've got the money to go diesel. Diesel off-roading and low range is definitely better. It's like electric. It's got that low-end torque where you just chug through things, and I do love that. But in general, gasoline is just going to be cheaper, I think. Yeah. Even if it gets worse mileage, I think.
Yeah.
How long are you planning on being Baja when you return? I don't know. It really depends. Right now, we're kind of in this mode of like, if we can make some money to save for the future legs of the trip, we want to do it. But honestly, if this keeps snowing here, outside the window is Goose covered in snow. And we're going to have to go out and camp in it tomorrow and see if our water tanks freeze and what happens. And if it does, we're going to have to pull the plug. And if we go to Baja, I'd love to spend a few weeks at least.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, easily I could spend months in Baja. Yeah. So it just all depends on commitments that we have and other things like that. But I could stay there for a long time.
Yeah. And we were thinking about, we did that podcast with Slow Baja, and he's got an FJ40 and likes going to Baja. So maybe we'll do a Goose trip and a Tonto trip to Baja.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Another Baja question.
Why Robbie Gordon, with all his resources, haven't been able to win? This is a hot topic among my Baja friends. If you ever talk to any of them, Robbie Gordon is probably one of the fastest drivers in Baja, but he generally just crashes because he just mats the throttle, and he's got a ton of skill, but he just breaks everything. And then conversely, you've got like Larry Ragland and Rob Martinson. This is really interesting. Stay with me.
I get to hear about this a lot.
You've got Rob Martinson and Larry Ragland who, you know, they come around a corner in Baja when you're racing and they look slow, but they're winning the race because they don't abuse their equipment. So my reason why Robbie Gordon can't do it is that he can never take care of the equipment well enough, but he's an amazing driver. So what are you going to say?
Bobby, thank you. I think you're the first person ever to do the whatever it's called, super chat.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Very cool. So yeah, I could go on. That's my thing that I've literally learned in life, to shut up pretty quickly. But if I've had a couple beers around a campfire and somebody asks about Baja, you're going to hear a lot about Baja.
Tim can talk Baja for a long
time. It's basically somewhat legal Mad Max that still exists. Someday it's going to become illegal. But at the point I was doing it, it was still insane. Driving down highways, not closed, with traffic, and you're going as fast as you can, and everyone seems to be okay with it. It's completely insane, but it's wonderful.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
if anyone has any more questions, get them in
now.
Go for it. But we've been talking for about an hour. So.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
We're excited for what's up next. As far as countries, people always ask us. We can't make plans anymore. We were making plans for a lot of different countries, and now I think it's going to be more based on who's going to let us in. Not necessarily first. We're not just going to drop everything and go to whatever countries first. But if we can't get into Africa or Australia, or get into Eastern Europe or something, then maybe we'll head up to Alaska and do some more trips into Baja. But we're kind of, everything's on the table. Yeah. We've been talking about doing the Trans-America Trail on motorcycles. We've been talking about doing the Trans-Europe Trail on motorcycles. All the backcountry discovery routes, they're kind of tame. I'd love to do them on a dirt bike and then be able to do some side stuff off of it. There's so much.
Yeah, we have so many.
I want to take a boat to Lake Powell, because Lake Powell has more coastline than the western coast of the United States, and do overlanding or whatever. I don't know. Every time I say it's a new word, but Any paranormal experiences? Nothing that we saw. I don't know. Did you?
No, in the next episode, it's creepy, and we're at a mine in the middle of nowhere, and there's 2 dogs that live there. So it felt very, very odd. But that was probably like the creepiest place I think I felt where I was like worried that someone was around.
It took us days to get there. And then, there's this town of several thousand people that live there for 50 years or 40 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And there's like 50s era diners, and it's this mine in the middle of nowhere that takes us, even with our extended range, basically at the maximum range just to get there and back to the nearest gas station. It was crazy. And these dogs, we found pictures today of them living there in 2017.
Yeah, so they've been
there for years. And just occasionally when somebody drops by to see this crazy old mining town that's been abandoned, they get fed.
And one of them is really, really old and had like crazy giant scars all over his body. So who knows what happened to him? But
thank you, Manuel. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So
that's
but nothing really crazy, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. I think the craziest stuff we've seen has been back here in the U.S. when we're camping in. Before I did the military training, I'd camp out sometimes, and you'd see lights doing weird stuff at night and all that. And then you meet these guys, and they're like, "Oh, we do a lot of like night drops with night vision on, and this and that." And so you start to understand some of it. But out in the weird deserts out here, you see more strange stuff, I think.
Thanks, Scott. We hopefully get to catch up with you soon again.
Yeah, absolutely. Rodrigo, the Dakar Rally. So if you saw our video where we were waiting to get across the Darien Gap, or around it rather, we missed the Dakar Rally. It's something I've wanted to see my whole life, and I thought we were going to make it to it. And then because the ship was delayed by a few weeks or a month, by the time we hit Colombia, we would have had to have done all-out driving just to get there and skip a bunch of countries.
Yeah, so we were super bummed that it didn't work out, because that was the plan, was to go and see Dakar. But
so yes, I want to see Dakar. That's absolutely like a bucket list item for me in life, is to experience the Dakar Rally. Now it's in Saudi Arabia, but we missed the last South America one. But that's why we went out in those dunes in the one episode too, is to follow a couple of the Dakar Rally stage tracks out there and just check it out. So that's definitely a bucket list item for us. Yeah, La Carrera, Pan America, that's a race that happens in Mexico, and there's very strict classes, very old cars. And actually, the Slow Baja guy who we did the podcast with, he's done that race. That would absolutely be something I would love to do. That's still sort of a Mad Max thing too, where you're flying through Mexico on these roads and racing in vintage cars with some really obscure, strange classes. So that's something we for sure would love to do.
Most of your vehicles show other overlanders and various vehicles, but not many Jeeps.
So it depends on the country. We did see Jeeps, but in certain countries we would see old Jeeps only. I mean, or you say that better. Most countries you'd see 0 Jeeps. But if you're going to see them, you see the ones from the 70s and the 60s. And at that time, they must have had a really good international sales thing going on. And a lot of these mining towns, and there were certain towns in Mexico in the mountains where that's all they had was the old Gladiator, sort of, they call them the what are they, pig nose or whatever style, 70s front end Gladiators and Wagoneers. And it was amazing. They were everywhere. This town just committed to this model truck, and they know how to work on it. And that's all that was there. So we'd see a lot of Jeeps, but in very concentrated areas. We met no overlanders in Jeeps at all. No. Of course, Dan Greck did, Central South America and Africa.
Them, but not often did we run into any of them, I don't think.
No, I think what was weird is we saw more obscure things like Ford Raptors. Every single country, including Bolivia, we saw a Ford Raptor, not a traveler, a local. So that was wild. Every country, the people love those trucks. We'd see Dodge diesels. So trucks that you really wouldn't expect to see, we saw. Lima, Peru, there was like a bunch of Dodge guys driving around. So it's fairly obscure. You just didn't see a lot of Jeeps. I think it's a great vehicle, and I'm sure you can get parts. But really, we found that it's so hard to get parts in most of these countries regardless, that a local mechanic can rig something up for you, even if it's not the correct part. Or a flight to the United States and back is often faster, and I won't quite say cheaper, but it's definitely faster, and it's not that much more expensive by the time you're all said and done. If you have like 5 or 10 parts you need, I think in the future we might have like a certain amount of money in an account that we just, have.
Rapid fire Baja question. Trophy truck, 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive?
4-wheel drive is going to take over, but 2-wheel drive has always been king. So 4-wheel drive, I guess.
Where did Goose get shipped from in South America to the USA?
Montevideo, Uruguay. So yeah, that's a great place to ship from, especially if you don't have to do roll on, roll off. That's kind of the one. We checked all the prices. We talked to plenty of travelers, read all the reviews. Montevideo is the place to go. We did put in a review for the guy we used because he forgot to fill out certain forms. And when we got to the United States, it could have resulted in like $2,500 in a fine, and they could have seized our truck. And so, be careful who you use. But in general, everyone in Montevideo, it seemed like it was a broker, did a pretty good job, and it was the cheapest, I think, compared to Buenos Aires.
Or Chile. Chile was quite
Chile
expensive.
was insane. $10,000 to get from California to Chile or back. Chile's just insanely expensive in general. I mean, it's wonderful, but it's...
Henry says, you have shown me more of my country than I know myself. And he's from Bolivia.
Oh, thanks, Henry. That's
awesome.
Cool. It's Bolivia beautiful. Is the most insane geological place. I mean, we drove our truck to almost 19,000 feet. Mm-hmm. And then, we were up, 5 days before we're seeing the jungle up north. Yeah. And so it just changes so much everywhere you go that's what was so cool about it.
Yeah, beautiful country.
Well, cool. I think we've held you guys long enough, but thank you, everyone. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
if you have questions for us, feel free to put them in the comments, and I'll try and manually reply to them later. Or if you ever have comments on the videos, give us some time because we're usually remote. But when we do get into a hotel like this, I try and go through everything and make sure we answer everybody's questions. So let's see, one last one. Howdy, just tuning in, but was wondering if you had any problems sleeping in a rooftop tent. I mean, no, not really. And so ours was kind of
due to noise.
Yeah, noise and smoke was probably the biggest issue we kind of went over earlier, but not really any issues with it. No safety issues with being a rooftop tent. I do like that ours, because it's not really a rooftop tent. We cut the roof off. You can get into the truck and drive away. So we always kind of had a plan that, if I said something or if she said something, we kind of not a code, but it's sort of like a code. We just
rhubarb.
Yeah, rhubarb. Go. She would hold the top down because the latches are on the outside, and I would just hightail it, right? But never had any issues. Chris, you know the answer to that question. Chris Huber says rollerblades or roller skates. It's got to be blades, Chris. If you're not blading, you're not living. Okay, fruit booter till I die. So thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciate it, and we're always inspired that people actually care to follow along with our trip and appreciate the videos. Kelsey does an amazing job with all the editing.
It's been really cool to be back in the U.S. and get to meet up with a lot of you guys, and we have an amazing community. So we really value that.
Yeah, we hope to in another 5 years or 10 still be doing this. I don't know what country we'll be in or what our vehicle will look like, but we just want to keep going because life is too short. So hopefully whatever you're doing in life right now, you have some sort of plan in place to get yourself out there. And that's what we really want to do, is just help other people realize that we were sitting in cubicles too. And it might be a crazy choice, but life is so short. We don't know how much time we have. So get out there and do it. And hopefully we can help you if you have any questions.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, guys.